Welcome to the last program of the 2005 International or Intellectual Freedom Festival. Our program today deals with the topic of censorship in the arts, and our speaker is Mr. Benjamin Chait, owner of Chait Galleries downtown. Mr. Chait grew up in Florida and came to Iowa after being trained as an architect at Tulane University and earning a master's degree in architecture and urban design at Washington University in St. Louis. He spent 2 years as a VISTA volunteer in St. Louis, and then took a job in 1974 as an architect at the University of Iowa Hospitals and Clinics. And several years later, he went into private practice. He's the local architect responsible for the 2002 renovation of Pearson's Drugstore. And in 2003, Mr. Chait and his wife also transformed the 123-year-old building at 218 East Washington Street from a video rental store into Chait Galleries downtown. And it's a 2,500 square foot art gallery. He's played a part in the development of Uptown Bill's Small Mall and helped the nonprofit group establish Uptown Arts, a gallery and music studio that exhibits the work of local artists, including those with disabilities. As an artist, much of his work centers around digital photography, producing life-sized and larger representations of his subjects. His images range from 16 by 20 to 13 by 40 inches, sometimes even larger. Never one to shy away from the bold, Mr. Chait opened Unzipped, an erotic art show at his downtown gallery in April of this year. Artists from across the nation were asked to give their interpretations of what erotic is. Mr. Chait will speak to us today about envisioning and creating the Unzipped show. He'll talk about the community's response and his work to enroll the community to both participate and attend. Please welcome Benjamin Chait.
Well, I think she said everything there is to say about me. We're going to start off with showing about a 10 or 11 minute video that we had one of our artists prepare of the show. And it's, I think everybody here might be okay with it. There may be some mature, aspects of it that some people might find offensive, so I'll give you a little heads up. But I think what we'll do is we'll show the video, and then after that I'll talk about how we put it together and what our experience was and stuff like that. So enjoy this, it's really pretty cool. In the fall of last year, we decided at the Chait Galleries downtown that we wanted to have an erotic art show. And it took us about 6 or 7 months to put it together. And one of the first things that we wanted to do is get a little feedback from the county attorney, the city attorney, and people like that as to the propriety of the show, the legality of the show, not the propriety, but the legality of the show. And one of the visions that I had for the show in general was to engage the community in a bigger way than just have it at the galleries. You know, we contacted other venues to collaborate with us to be able to have more than one event around this show. The response that we got was, in my opinion, amazing. We were able to work with a local nightclub to have some after-party events. We were able to work with other art venues to more collaborate in the presentation of the experience for our customers and patrons. And we were able to work with the Englert Theater, which was just getting going last year. And in trying to anticipate some of the issues, the community standards issues and concerns that were raised by, you know, some of our conversations with people that we talked to early on. We wanted to give everybody an opportunity to participate in sharing their opinions and expressions of, you know, what they thought of it. So we were able to put together a panel discussion that preceded the show, which presented all different aspects of, you know, conservative to liberal to, you know, very out there. And the show, as it came together, we originally were going to have a 4-night event. It ultimately ended up being a 3-night event, preceded by the panel discussion. We had student night, we had young professional night, and then we had a more general night, which was a masquerade event. All of the evenings at the gallery were sold out. It exceeded our expectations. We got incredible press from, you know, all around, not just the local media, but regionally. And in our call for artists, we got a lot of local art. A lot of our current artists that we had at the gallery participated with their interpretation of erotic. And we had work from all over the country. Looking at this video, when I first saw it, I was, you know, this is the second time I've seen it, so I wasn't blown away like I was the first time. It was put together by a Hollywood filmmaker who's one of our artists who lives in the state. And, you know, looking at the way that we put this thing together, I mean, you know, in my opinion, this could have been a, you know, an LA show. The art was great. The experience was very positive. We had, I think, the entire range of experience in that even in this video, the people that were naked and being painted in the gallery, that was almost guerrilla theater. We had no idea that that was going to be happening. And it came out just fine. We had originally, I had originally thought that we would make this an annual event, and my goal was to engage the community. The level of engagement in terms of other venues and the participation that we had the first year exceeded any expectation that I had. The other thing that exceeded any anticipation that I had was how much work it was. And, you know, it's taken us, it took me at least 4 months to recover from the work. And even now, I'm not sure whether we're going to do it again or whether we might do it biannually. But In terms of what we had set out to do, we far exceeded any expectation. One of the first pieces of feedback that I got from some of my, more valued customers was, be careful about doing this. You've worked so hard to, establish your reputation, and you don't want to kind of, make a huge mistake that you won't recover from. And as it turned out, those folks bought the first tickets to the show and raved about the experience that the show presented. Does anybody have any questions? We got no negative comments at all. When I was, anticipating, the art that we would receive, I was kind of expecting a lot of very dark New York bondage erotic kind of art. That's just what I was anticipating. And as it turned out, we didn't get any of that. My dilemma in anticipating it was how to be open to the possibility of having it, and how would we display it. And we had all kinds of, kind of plans in our mind as to where we would put it, depending on the extent of it and the degree of it, to have it be something that people that would come in not expecting the degree of intensity of, the eroticism, would be adequately warned about it. But we didn't really get very much that was, beyond that line. And instead of having some stuff in the upstairs galleries or downstairs galleries, we just kind of, had it more toward the back with, more screening. And we sort of told people that, the more into the gallery they got, the more, the more intense the art would be.
Sorry, I have a couple more questions. So I think we all have a general idea of what erotic is, but I wondered if you had, when you sent out a call for art, did you send out a call nationwide?
We did. Yeah.
And how did you define the scope of what you were looking for?
We didn't really get any more specific than just to say erotic art.
Okay.
Looking for, individual artists' interpretation of what erotic meant. The edgiest stuff was some, photography that was, kind of, a little pornography-esque, but only because that's the context in which it was created. But the rest of it is, just very fine art with a sexual nature. I think some of the most erotic art was some photography of some jars, bottles, that were submitted by an 85-year-old male photographer.
The
and his
pears
wife.
were great, too.
Yeah, yeah.
The other thing was, I've forgotten what it is. Oh, don't you usually, maybe I'm wrong, but don't you usually emphasize the work of local or regional artists? And so why for this show did you go nationwide?
Well, we don't normally have a commitment to local versus, anywhere artists. When we worked in the first year, we worked with Arts Iowa City in a collaboration, and Arts Iowa City at that particular point in time featured local artists. But we are approached by artists, maybe a dozen a week who want to be in our gallery, and those artists come from all over the world. We have people, and when I say that doesn't mean they're not local, because if you emigrate here from, France or, Romania, you become local. But a lot of the art that we do have comes from people who are friends, people who emigrate, but who have friends back in Russia and, Ukraine and places like that, who send work to their friends to have it viewed over here.
having grown up in California, nudity isn't terribly shocking to me. We had nude beaches. Of course, all the bodies here were rather better than what one would see on those beaches. But I was really struck with the video in particular at how comfortable everybody was with nudity. And I would love it if some national media had covered this and said, here we are in the heartland, and all of this is so, the nude figure is us. We're so comfortable with it. And I agree with you. I thought personally that the most erotic subject of all were the pairs. And I think that's, to me, an important indication of, the limits in thinking about the erotic by so many people, in which they foreclose access to the nude as if somehow or another that veers into the pornographic by necessity. And even your so-called, as you said, pornographic first prize winner in the photography show was funny. It was really hysterical, and it was shown on the video. So did you get any national coverage that would kind of
No.
be able to be used this way?
No, we invited Bill O'Reilly, but no, we didn't get a response from anything national. One of the key components of putting the show together was, my desire to have, not just art, but an experience and a performance, and it was very, we had the kind of context for each of the evenings that was common denominator was we had our servers were wearing only paint. And, we rehearsed that and were able to, document that and get that into our marketing. But the performances, were, from local people who read poetry or, performed, interpretations of readings or, art pieces and things like that. There wasn't, a whole lot of rehearsal for what we did, although we sort of had in mind kind of what we wanted to do.
To what degree was this show used by you or by others as a focal point for discussing intellectual freedom and censorship and those kinds of issues?
Well, we preceded the show with a panel discussion at the Englert Theater, and we invited Serena from the university and people from local churches. There was the Parkview Church was represented. We had art historians, artists represented, and we had a gentleman has an extensive background in the porn industry, to offer, a wide range of, attitude about what erotic art might be and how, it would be appropriate or not appropriate in society, in this community. But it is interesting that when we talked about having an erotic art show, the first thing that I can't say uneducated, but people that just don't have the ability to look at possibilities in art as, something that would be an experience to be open to, whatever that might be. Those people would immediately think of it in terms of pornography, that erotic and pornography were the same in their mind. And I think we kind of dispelled that even to people that had that, attitude by being able to look at what is erotic. And when you can have pairs, which, for me, they were a little more graphic than the glassware. But it's all about, sensitivity and light and shape and, what it suggests and, an individual's interpretation of what they see.
don't know. There's one disturbing aspect to this, that you felt that you had to put what you felt the more controversial artworks to the back. It seems like it almost contradicted the aim of your show. It seemed to me that you would want to mix them up in order to make a point that erotic art is erotic art, and what's out there, should all be seen equally. And it seems to me by pushing them more to the back, you are making a comment on them, that you feel a little more uncomfortable about those pieces than you felt about others. And I do agree, the most erotic one for me was the photograph of the pairs. It's just, the other ones were just, so it was their interpretations. And I just wondered what it was that made you feel that you had to push those into another room, that you had to categorize them.
Well, I mean, it was all in the gallery, and the way that I set the gallery is to engage, the people that come in there and have them be able to experience it and feel comfortable. I didn't want to shock anybody. And, I made the assessment that something was a little more erotic, or something that not everybody would feel comfortable seeing. And, it was more to be respectful of everybody. And at the same time, give everybody an opportunity to see everything. And that's just my personal, assessment about, how I wanted to do that. We didn't get the kind of stuff that I was prepared to have, and I would have shown that too, but it's about presentation. I mean, I really think that for us not to do a lot of damage, you don't want to turn a lot of people off when something is not in the proper context for them to see it. And, I think that it's kind of like foreplay. I mean, you got to warm up a little bit to get a sense of what's going on and your comfort level, and know which way you want to go in terms of what you want to do and what you want to see. And, there were people that, a few people that just didn't like anything and didn't want to be there. And, they got that sense pretty quickly coming into the gallery. They didn't have to get to the, to the very back stuff. But it's just a value judgment. But it was an interesting, kind of, mindset. How do I, present all this stuff and not censor it? And then that in itself, I think, is an art form.
Did teenagers or children come in, and had you anticipated their coming or thought about what you would do if they did?
We had an 18 and older policy for the performance, the 3 nights of the show. We have a lot of family people coming into the gallery, and a lot of families. And the way that we set up this particular show, during the set of the show, the time that it was up, when people came in with kids, we told them, that there was an erotic art show more geared in the back, and, that they might want to, govern, what their kids saw. And they all appreciated, the heads up, and mostly kept the kids out of the back room, the little kids.
Before you set up the show, did you give any thought to the Robert Mapplethorpe incident in Cincinnati?
We talked about, issues of censorship, and, when we contacted the city attorney and the county attorney, and it was more about having nude servers, could we do that? We kind of didn't just do something and hope nobody would bust us. So that was all kind of pre-cleared.
Are you familiar with the Mapplethorpe incident?
Not specifically the one you're referring to.
That was some time ago, maybe 10 years ago. And
I'm familiar with his
I never
work.
saw it. I just know there was some kind of censorship imposed, or maybe he was prohibited from actually exhibiting. Maybe someone else has
Serena
background
probably
on
can
this.
tell us about exactly what happened.
Actually, it's kind of a neat statement about the so-called average American, because in fact, the Cincinnati city attorney did come in, close down the museum, and put the museum director eventually on trial. And the jury found that there was no abuse of any law by this show. It had, unfortunately, and this is what most censorship activities do have, it had results that weren't necessarily legal results. In other words, people begin to be chilled and frightened and censor themselves. And that keeps them from doing some of the things they might have dared to do. And that's why I think it's so wonderful that you guys, and maybe that's part of being in Iowa City, you know, you did contact the authorities, but you didn't really, you weren't scared out of doing this. And I also believe there was also a major, recently in the last couple of years, erotic art show in Seattle, a very large erotic art show. So that there's kind of a return to exploring these visual themes, which I do think was affected by the Mapplethorpe issues and by other issues constraining the various endowments and their support. Does that answer it?
The feedback that we got from more the county attorney than the city attorney was that having nude servers and, you know, in bars and things like that, strippers and stuff, there are regulations. The fact that the purpose of the nudity wasn't to arouse in any way, and that it was in an art context is what, you know, made it okay, although they did suggest that you really think about, do you want to do this? So they had their opinions about maybe no, but legally there's no reason not to. My experience about the show is that, you know, as unique as Iowa City is in the state, you know, more liberal, more whatever, it's still pretty swept along in terms of most people's mindset. You do what you do because that's what you do, and there's proper and there's not proper and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, but that doesn't mean that there's not a lot of people that embrace the out of the box, the different, the edge, and you know, there's enough of that, you know, interest that I think it was a very successful show and it was a very worthwhile show, and it served, you know, a large part of the community in offering that, and it didn't offend anybody, even people that came in that weren't, you know, terribly comfortable, weren't, you know, offended about it.
Would you have done this if you lived in a less progressive community?
Probably. I mean, I don't know that I would find myself living in a less progressive community, but, you know, yeah, I wouldn't hesitate to do it again. And
You mentioned it took you 4 months to recover. What was it about it that took so long?
oh, it was just a lot of work. I mean, we had a lot of art. We had a lot of artists to deal with. We had, you know, a lot of commitment to the installation. You know, we've only been in business 2 years in terms of how you know, arrange shows and deal with people. And dealing with this was just a huge amount of time. And the 4 months was more getting back to normal and recovering from things that, you know, didn't get the attention. And
So the 4 months was after it was over.
after it was over, yeah, I mean, you know, before it was, you know, before we had it, you know, I'd always thought we're going to do this every year. This is going to be an annual thing and blah, blah, blah. And during the show even, I mean, the energy of it was incredible, and the response was really good. And the fact that we had so many, you know, different co-conspirators, you know, the Siren Ginsbergs, the Englert, all of the Riverside Theater participation, the habeas corpus participation. I mean, it was like, you know, a festival, which is what I had hoped. But after it was over, you know, just recovering. You know, I didn't have the same attitude, you know, of excitement, call it postpartum, whatever. It was just different. And I still haven't made a decision. I think everybody else on our staff and in our team has made a decision. And that's probably, but I haven't made that yet.
I was thinking about another reason why presenting the nude was suppressed, not only because of pressures from the right, but also pressures from the left. Because about 20 years ago and forward in time, there was the sense that somehow or another it was it's not feminist to support presentations of the nude female body. And I thought one of the things the show did so beautifully, and your video shows it wonderfully, is that you had nude females, you had nude males. It was kind of a celebration of the human body and of all kinds of human bodies. They weren't all exquisite human bodies or emaciated human bodies. And I thought that created a great, powerful vision too. And the video also showed the looking at, captured that idea of looking at the human body and being sometimes amused and sometimes enlightened and sometimes intrigued. I thought that was all quite wonderful.
Yeah, we clearly had a big commitment to, you know, the equality of the sexes, so to speak, and that we had women, we had men, and we tried to balance that. I mean, it would have been real easy, you know, to just have women, I think. But it was more important to be able to, you know, have it more balanced like that. I mean, and the other level of balance I think that we worked hard at was the gay, straight, you know, different, you know, interpretations of what sexuality was and that kind of thing. And we you know, embraced, you know, as much as we could. I think we embraced everything.
When you had the panel discussion at the Englert, you said you had some representatives from a church.
We had a representative of the Parkview Evangelical Church, and I think it was their youth minister.
What their responses were.
I think he was, you know, pretty understanding of, you know, society in many respects. I mean, he's a youth minister, so he hears a lot of, you know, I think anti-religious, anti-doctrine kind of stuff, and is more geared towards, you know, addressing the concern but still preaching, you know, his philosophy. And talked about, I think, a little bit about art and representation of the body and stuff through history.
As I recall, the panel was before the show opened. Did you have any responses from the panelists after they saw the show?
No.
The panelists saw the show before.
Yeah, the show was up. It wasn't, the show was installed and set. It was just the Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, the performance stuff and the, you know, they didn't see the models and things like that.
But the minister hadn't seen the show, and I thought his message was that religion doesn't disconnect faith from the celebration of pleasure and the human body. And I thought he did a very nice job of that. He neither validated nor critiqued the show in particular, but he was trying to make the very important point that the spiritual and the material should be integrated for a full life. You think that's fair? I'd love to hear, I mean, I know you played a big role in this whole show, and would you be willing to say something about it?
I'd be happy to.
Why don't you introduce yourself?
I'm Terry Miller Chait, wife, partner of Benjamin. And I don't know, I guess I would add a few comments when he talked about whether we would do the show again. Of course, I'm the first one who would say, no, we won't do the show again, because where it may have taken him 4 months to get the artwork packed up and off the walls, sent back, get the gallery reset, all of those kinds of things, I worked the front end of the show, getting it prepared. And so it was a full-time job for months to work with the different people that were involved, get the panel set up. I didn't work very much with the artists. That was a task that Benjamin took on. We did have a couple of artists from the university jury the show. And so those kinds of tasks I was not so much involved in. But one of the things that we really wanted to present to the community was a full range of erotic art, not just visual art that was on the walls, but we wanted to have the theater, which is why we involved Riverside Theater, and Habeas Corpus brought in dance. We wanted to have erotic music, which we had some music by Paula Grady and some other people. Poetry, as Benjamin mentioned, some different erotic readings. We really wanted to be able to expose all types of erotic art. And so that really did involve a lot of people from the community, and it made a wonderful kind of a presentation, I thought. But it was very interesting, and it was fun to be able to put together that kind of a show. And so I would guess we will probably do something similar to it moving forward, but probably not that same kind of thing again. It was so labor intensive, both before and after.
Was that show more labor intensive in terms of the planning, the takedown, and all of the things you mentioned? Was it more labor intensive than any other kind of special exhibition or show?
More so than anything we have done.
Probably by a factor of 6,
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
easy, 6 times or more.
I mean, I can't even think of the next biggest, maybe the holiday show last year, or Andy Warhol. None of those compare.
I mean, we had a lot of
At
art
all.
coming in crates, I mean, in big, wooden crates. I mean, the Warhol stuff was bigger crates, but it was one set of art. And normally, artists bring things to us, and we put them up. This, we have had art from all over the country that we've never met the artists that have shipped things. So it was real unique in that respect.
The Chait Galleries is well known for its collaboration with the nonprofits. So it's not that the collaboration was more in terms of the degree of collaboration, but in terms of the numbers, was that it? Because the collaboration for this show were with many organizations at the same time. I think you collaborate with all these organizations, but usually on a singular basis as opposed to a multiple. Was that part of the reason for the extra labor intensity?
Not really, because, working with, Riverside Theater, for example, they put a lot of energy into it, so they brought a lot of, teamwork to the table. And, Nora Marcos and Mark McCusker with Habeas Corpus, they did, an incredible amount of enrolling people that we didn't know were going to be there. And, it was a very synergistic experience in terms of the degree of collaboration. So it wasn't more, it was more synergistic, it wasn't more of a drain in that respect.
No surprise, I don't agree with
Well, yeah, I mean,
your assessment of it.
we're married, of course.
Because I think that did have a lot to do with it. I think also what made it so much more work is that we were choreographing the event. And generally, when we have someone come into the gallery, they are more in charge of what they want to do. We open the gallery, allow them to bring whatever they want. If, like Moon Garden Theater, if Paula Grady wishes to have a theater in the gallery, she pretty much handles selling the tickets, dealing with what the setup is going to be. She handles pretty much everything around her event. And in this instance, we handled everything around every part of the event, choreographing what was going to happen when Lana Keller was going to bring her jewelry in, when the servers, it all had to be scheduled and designed. And so I think that's what took so much effort, plus the marketing of it was a lot too.